Both the Vikings and Bengals are bringing backup quarterbacks to this nooner contest. Who can take advantage of the weakness? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the show, jam-packed show for you. We'll go over a little bit of injury news as well as the Zoever Under, which is a segment where we look at the week's betting lines via FanDuel and, of course, your bold predictions. But before we get into any of that, first off, if you're watching on YouTube, hope you like the new setup. We're there. We're set up. This is more or less what it's going to look like as long as the sound panels don't fall off behind me, which has been happening. But the main topic of the show is going to be about Jake Browning. Pete Bercich actually just put out a great video kind of scouting Jake Browning, looking at like the reasons behind his interceptions and stuff in the Jaguars game. And I think it's important whenever you walk into a game against a backup quarterback, and it's funny because this is a mirrored thing. So like the Bengals fans and the way they perceive their defense is going to be the same thing. Like, oh, it's Carson Wentz. Surely we're not going to lose one to Carson Wentz. Well, one of these teams is going to lose one to one of these backups, right? And with Browning, I think it's important to understand that backup quarterbacks aren't potatoes. This is a lesson we learned very hard in the Cooper Rush game, right? Where Cooper Rush was treated like he was just an idiot. They basically gave him semi-difficult throws all game. You go listen to my big rant after that one. That's where I finally capitulated and started calling for Mike Zimmer to be fired, because they gave him these like wide open throws that were just sort of like semi-difficult throws to make. And he consistently made them because he was otherwise unaffected. They did a really bad job of getting pressure on him. They did a really bad job of making those throws contested or making the margins of error small or anything like that. And so suddenly Cooper Rush looked like the best quarterback ever because he helped things be a little easy. All he had to do was be able to accurately throw outside the hashes. They treated him like a potato. They thought that that it didn't really matter if they gave him open looks or not. They were just relying on him screwing up and waiting for an opportunity to go make something happen. And he never gave you that screw up, and the Cooper Rush game happened. This was a really big moment of learning, at least for me, to say, okay, when you are going against a backup quarterback, you have to test him as much as possible. It's not necessarily, when you're going up against a superstar quarterback, it's like you kind of have to make your own luck. You have to find a way to generate a sack, find a way to trick him and get an interception when you're going up against somebody like an older quarterback, like Andrew Van Ginkel pick-sixing Aaron Rodgers in London last year. That kind of, you got to make your own opportunities by making a really good play. Against a backup, you can get away with saying, I'm just going to make this really hard for you and bank on the fact that you can't do it. And that might be what the Vikings do. But exercise caution, because Jake Browning is no potato. He can read out the concept well if you let it happen. He can utilize pre-snap information if you let him have good pre-snap information. He can utilize it. Can he do that if you disguise the look? This is kind of what Pete Bercich was talking about on his Eye in the Sky on his YouTube channel. Can he do that? Can he hit a tight window while he's getting hit? And this is where I think the opportunity to induce a mistake out of Jake Browning. You can't just wait for him to do it on his own. You've got to induce it. You've got to make the situation such that Jake Browning screws up. And I think the way to do that is, I think you got to send guys all day. I'm not going to break a lot of new ground here. This game is going to be decided by the turnover margin. Jake Browning threw 3 interceptions last week. Carson Wentz, famously not very careful with the football. This is going to come down to the turnover margin. I don't think anybody's going to tell you too much different. Everybody's preview is going to be like, you got to win the turnover battle kind of every week. But to induce that, you need to get pressure on him. And then the looks that you get downfield, especially against a blitz, will look a little bit enticing, right? He's a little bit greedy in not so perfect situations. Jake Browning's mistake is often, oh, I think I can fit that in there. And then he can't. Or, oh, I think I really, really, really saw a good look. And he's like not willing enough to give it up before he gets hit. And then suddenly the ball comes out bad because he was getting hit as he threw. And in reality, he probably should have pulled that, tried to scramble, do something else. Maybe even just take the sack and live to fight another day. And he won't do that. He'll say, but that was a really good look. And he'll greet it. Make him be greedy, and then you have to have the wherewithal to punish him for being greedy. So if it's, Vikings practice all week, I hope they were doing tips and overthrows. That would be a very important thing to quick refresher, because I do think that kind of thing will happen. And the thing is, you have to be a little proactive. You have to make your own luck, even against a guy like Jake Browning, and don't let it be easy. That's the thing. If you make things difficult on him, then you can sit there and say, okay, we're going to make it really hard and hope a mistake comes. And if he rises to the test or to the challenge, if he answers all the questions on the test that the Vikings provide him, you tip your cap and you say, good job, backup. But you're kind of banking on that not happening. And if they can do that, then they should be able to get turnover opportunities, and you have to capitalize on those turnover opportunities. Similarly, I would think if I'm the Bengals, I am coming at this defensively with the exact same idea. I am coming at this saying, we want to put pressure on Carson Wentz. We want to give him opportunities to greet it. We're going to play a lot of quarters. If I'm playing against the Vikings, by the way, I'm playing a ton of quarters against Carson Wentz. I'm going to have my poach safety, my tricks if you're a Fangio guy, which is the weak side inside safety in corners, in quarters. Because the Vikings love to do a lot of deep overs, and so do the Bengals, so this is kind of universal. This is a bit of a mirror match schematically. Zach Taylor and Kevin O'Connell both off the McVay tree. But those crossers that start from the strong side and go to the weak side, that weak side safety is going to love to kind of poach that or hunt it or be a trick safety, whatever your word is for it. But basically, they're going to try to get an interception there. And I'm going to tell that guy, slow play it. Make it look more open than it is. Really try to be sneaky about it. Slow play it. Don't just sit there and let it happen, but slow play it and know exactly where you need to be to jump on that ball, and don't be an inch closer. Make it look open. Make them test a tight window, because these are both probably, they're both backups probably because they're greedy. Certainly for Carson Wentz, being overly greedy is what cost him a bunch of turnovers in his starting opportunities and ruin those opportunities, in addition to the off-field stuff. But like on the field, it was that he wouldn't just take the responsible gain and live to fight another day. You would always have to play hero ball. I want Carson Wentz playing hero ball if I'm the defense. And if you're the Vikings, you're telling Carson Wentz, dude, just chill. Just be the guy that you are. That's the thing. So I'm curious to see what happens with Carson Wentz. It's a little B-plot curiosity as we wait for the real guy, J.J. McCarthy, to come back. But there are a lot of really interesting matchups here, and we talked about a lot of it yesterday with James Rapine on the crossover. One I've been thinking a lot more about is Javon Hargrave versus Dalton Risner. That, to me, is a real key one, because both of those guys have weaknesses that I'm really familiar with now that I've covered both of them. And I think they both have enough of the skill sets required to take advantage of each other's weaknesses. So if those guys end up across from each other a lot, if I'm the Bengals, I might want to run at Hargrave, even if that's Risner right there. And I think Risner can get at least enough of a push and get a good block, or at least a good seal, to make that run game happen. And if I'm the Vikings, I am lining Javon Hargrave over Risner as much as I can, because I love the way that Hargrave's swim moves is particularly good against the way that Risner tends to lose pass reps, where he gets out over his skis, he bends at the waist. Swimming up and over and being tall against that is really, really effective. So I feel like both sides are going to love that matchup, and we'll have to see who's actually right about it, which I always think is very, very, very fun when you get that kind of thing. Both guys are going to feel like they can get the better of each other, and we'll see who actually ends up winning. I think that's awesome. It's just a cool thing when that happens in football. We have a lot more to go over, some injury reports, some Zoever under. That'll be next on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by DoorDash. Oh my God, DoorDash has been insane for me. I've been moving this week. That's why I had a temp set up for a long time this week, and I have participated in DoorDash quite a bit. But Here on the Locked On Vikings podcast, we are working with DoorDash to crown each week an MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you could win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these are the kinds of players that deliver when it matters most. So let's break it down. And for the Vikings, not a lot of delivering happened in the Atlanta game. But if I were to focus on one positive, I've got to give it to Jalen Nailor. Jalen Nailor delivered a ton of separation. He was open all the time. He was open on that fade in the end of the game that maybe could have sparked a last-ditch comeback effort. J.J. McCarthy misses the throw, unfortunately. Nailor catches a crazy out route over his head, big circus catch, and was open for a touchdown that should have been hit for the second week in a row. Jalen Nailor is delivering when the pressure is on, when the Vikings need it. He is really becoming a guy that they can count on for a go-to explosive play when they need it most. And just like Jalen Nailor is delivering for the Minnesota Vikings, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You're about to hear a lot of FanDuel lines when we do the Zoever under. And if you want to get in on any of them, right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. This can work for a lot more than just the Vikings lines we're about to talk about. For example, you could take that first $5 and you could place it on a super heavily favored money line like the Kansas City Chiefs. They're minus 270 to beat the Giants. That's not a lot of value, but if you put your $5 on that and the Chiefs do indeed win and they don't drop to 0-3, then you could get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast. When you're done here, if you're craving a little film analysis and you miss J.J. McCarthy, I did put up a video breakdown of J.J. McCarthy's game against the Falcons. Of course, he got hurt, so we're not going to have a couple of these for a little while, so I had to do the last one we're going to get for about a month. And with the lens of how worried should we be about that. If you're interested in that, you can find it at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL for less than $4 a month. Moving on here, before we get into the Zoever under, let me quick give you an injury update. Everybody is, so we recorded the crossover on like Tuesday, so we didn't know any of this, but the injury report is still very, very, very long. A lot of limited participants, guys like Harrison Smith and Andrew Van Ginkel coming off of previous injuries. You got new injuries. Josh Oliver's got an ankle. Donovan Jackson's got a wrist. And then you have, of course, some DNPs. J.J. McCarthy is not going to be on IR, so he's going to be on every one of these injury reports as a DNP all week with his ankle. But we know that he's not going to play. Ryan Kelly, still DNP with his concussion. Same for Justin School. Christian Darrisaw is the interesting one. Oh, Jeff Okudah, full participant. That's excellent. Full participant both Wednesday and Thursday. Andrew Van Ginkel, limited participant Wednesday and Thursday. Also, that is a good sign. Not quite as good as full, but still nice. Let's talk about Darrisaw. So with his ACL injury, he was a full participant on Wednesday and a DNP on Thursday. This would be very concerning. You never want to see someone get worse throughout the week, but this has happened with Darrisaw the last couple of weeks. And the beat reporters have all said, like in unison, so they must have all got the same text, or maybe that was during the presser, that this is the plan. This was the plan for Darrisaw, that he was going to do a full day on Wednesday and then get a rest day on Thursday, and then they're going to see how he feels Friday. And so if he's a full participant Friday, that's going to be a really, really good sign for Darrisaw going. If he's a DNP again on Friday, then that's a little more concerning, and we have to start thinking how we're going to look with Walter Rouse. I do doubt that Justin School plays at all in the concussion protocol. He'll probably be inactive. Okay, now it's time for everybody's favorite betting segment, the Zoever Under. Here on the Zoever Under, we look at the FanDuel betting line. So thank you so much to FanDuel, sponsor of today's podcast. But we're not just looking at picks I like or what you think you should bet on. More so, I'm looking at FanDuel as a proxy for public opinion. How does the public feel about the Vikings taking on the Bengals? This is a tough one to make any sense of. The Vikings are favored by 3 at home. The money edges a little bit toward the Bengals at +3 versus the Vikings at -3. And by the way, later in the show, my Rabbits will in fact pick against the spread, so stay tuned for that. The over-under of this game is 42.5. So think of that as like a 23-20 kind of vibe. That's the score prediction of the general public, 23-20 Vikings. Of course, one of the biggest unknowns is what anybody's going to get out of any of these quarterbacks. Carson Wentz's passing line is 203.5 at -114. Jake Browning's 239.5 at -114. Looking at the touchdown props, you get a similar pattern. Carson Wentz, it's always 1.5 is always going to be where the line is. You're really looking at where the money is on that. It's plus 162 for Carson Wentz. It's plus 120 for Jake Browning. The only time you see 2.5 is if it's like Josh Allen or somebody really prolific. So that tells us that Carson Wentz is getting a lot less action on his touchdown, passing touchdown over than Jake Browning is, but neither of these guys are looking that great of bets to make to get more than just one passing touchdown. FanDuel actually has one where you can just straight up bet on who's going to get the most passing yards. Carson Wentz is plus 162, Jake Browning is minus 115. So in terms of the passing offense, the public expects the Bengals to outperform the Vikings, but in rushing offense, it is different. And in the actual receiving props, it is also a little bit different. Between Chase and Higgins, 69.5 for Chase, 55.5 for Higgins, and then Jefferson and Hawkinson and Naylor, you get a bigger total for the Vikings. The thing is, there's just a bunch more Bengals on this that are going to spread the ball around, I guess. Jefferson's line is at 72.5, Hawkinson's is at 32.5, and Naylor's is at 30.5. So that adds up to what, like 160, 165 of total passing between the kind of top three. And for the just top two of the Bengals, you get like 120 of it, or 125 of it. So essentially, the market is looking at the Bengals as an offense that's going to run through two guys and two guys only. Well, that's kind of interesting information, isn't it? If we were preparing and we also kind of had that take about the Bengals, you'd have to ask Locked On Bengals how true that is, how fair that is. But if we're just worried about those two guys, you sell out to beat those two guys and you go, okay, Mike Gesicki has to be the one that beats me, or Chase Brown through the air or whatever. Maybe you can stymie the passing game by making sure you've got brackets over the two big guys and then sending everybody else at Jake Browning and making him process and find a target that he likes more. I think we're going to see a game plan that looks something like that. Prioritize the two studs and then make everybody else on the team beat you. So here's where this gets interesting. Rushing-wise, the Vikings look a little bit more like people are a little bit more optimistic. Jordan Mason is his over-under is at 73.5. Chase Brown's is at 69.5, so just slightly edging out for Jordan Mason. Their number of attempts is even at 18.5, and actually Chase Brown's is shorter odds at minus 122 versus Jordan Mason at minus 108. What that means is that people are a little bit more confident that Chase Brown will get a little bit more rushing, but they don't think that he's going to get as many yards as Jordan Mason will. So there's a lot of hype around Jordan Mason and this rushing offense. I find that really, really, really interesting. But I'm getting a sense of, like, if you look through the player props, the general public is a little higher on all the Bengals than they are on all the Vikings. But the Vikings are favored by 3. It kind of is like the market doesn't know why it thinks that, but it does think that. So if we want to try to read into this a bunch, we think about it as the betting market, I guess, just is taking a little bit too much out of home field advantage, throwing its hands up and saying, otherwise this is backup battle, and I don't think they're getting a lot of money on this one anyways. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a sample size thing that's skewing these numbers in an interesting way as well. And if you think you can take advantage of that, check out FanDuel. But like many people have DM'd me to ask, you want to know who the Rabbits picked? So let's get into that. It's been a bit of a stressful week for the Rabbits. So because we've been moving, so I'm giving them their favorite. It's mint. They love mint leaf very, very much. That's their favorite. And as soon as I put it down, Zoe goes straight for the mint in the Vikings pile. So Zoe, for the first time this year, a Rabbit has picked the Vikings. It's Zoe. She goes for Minnesota -3. Meanwhile, ZD took a minute. He was on the litter box and wasn't quite sure what was going on. So he went and picked. He eventually went, there he goes. Okay, then he eventually picked, but he went for the Cincinnati Bengals. So also for the first time, the Rabbits have a disagreement and somebody is going to take the lead here. unless we have a push, I guess. If it's exactly the Vikings by 3, then the 2 rabbits will stay tied. Next up, your bold predictions. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days or that coffee shop that knows your order by heart, that corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. For me, I am an LA guy, so one of the places that is supported by Square, Phil's Coffee, is one that we had a phase of going to like every single day, but even something like Stone Oven that you can find in random malls, or LA Eats at SoFi Stadium, all supported by Square. For Minnesotan people, you can look at, say, Brewhouse Brew Labs, the Painted Turtle, very fun one, and even something like Shake Shack is also available there. You can find all of that supported by Square. Spending money there doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community around it. These local spots are what make the neighborhood feel like home, and so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more, but before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Okay, everybody, are you ready for some bold predictions? Let's look. I actually didn't look at the ones from Atlanta. Let's see if anybody won. The 14-yard line that tackled Danny Dimes, these are my bold predictions from last week, said that the stat lines from the national championship would more or less repeat themselves. I do not believe that. Because no team scored 30 to 39 points. Kevin said that Dallas Turner would get a Gink 6. We did not get that. Milo Graham said that the Vikings would have the most points in the NFL in week 2. Nope. And that no more than 60% of them would be scored by the offense. Nope. We didn't get there at all. Wu-Tang Clan Enjoyer said that a non-starting running back for either team would go over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. We did have Bijan Robinson go over 100 yards, but I'm going to call him the starter. Diamante Loco said that the Vikings would score both a kickoff and punt return TD. Nope. Bill Belichick's girlfriend's transfer portal request said Jalen Naylor would go speed mode and have a 100-yard, 2-touchdown game off of 3 receptions. A name I'm not going to pronounce said the 2 players drafted before McCarthy were Odunze and Penix, who have 4 career receiving and passing touchdowns, respectively. McCarthy would stunt on them by throwing for at least 4 touchdowns, and both those other guys wouldn't add to their totals. None of those things happened, and Aaron Freeman was the one who got the closest. He said that J.J. McCarthy would throw 3 interceptions. He sure should have, but one of them did clatter off the ground. Let's move on to the next one. I am going to try to take more bold predictions this year. So we've got quite a few today, so I'm going to dive right in. But if you want to submit a bold prediction, it's the same doc that you would submit questions for Twitter Tuesday in. Just click the bold prediction option instead of the hot take or the question, and I'll read them out on Fridays. The first one comes from Tim Peets, who said that somehow, someway, through means yet unknowable to mortal man, Desmond Ridder will see the field. Well, I wouldn't call these means unknowable. In fact, there is only one way for Desmond Ridder to see the field, and it's for both Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer to be injured. We've already heard from Kevin O'Connell that Carson Wentz will start, Max Brosmer will be the backup, and that Desmond Ridder will be the emergency third QB. So if Ridder is seeing the field, it has to be an injury to the first 2 guys, not a benching. Sam Huseby says that Jefferson and Naylor will match or outproduce Chase and Higgins. This one's not all that bold, but I am lowering the standard of boldness this year because I want more participation and I want to give away more Patreon subscriptions. By the way, if you do get this right, I will both. So the first person who got it right, Jordan Larson, asked for 3 months of Patreon, which I was happy to gift him, as well as donating $20 to the Humane Society, which was a charity of his choice. So if you win a bold prediction, same deal for you. I'll donate $20 to a charity of your choice, and I'll also gift you 3 months of patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL because I finally figured out how to do that. Tush Pusher says that Brett Rippon will lead a game-winning drive against us. Brett Rippon's over there in Cincinnati now. He said it was, Jake Browning would get injured. I am removing that stipulation. I don't want bold predictions to be rooting for injuries often. The Desmond Ridder one, there's no real way around it. But if Jake Browning gets benched and Brett Rippon beats us, I'm giving you this, okay? Aren't you glad I didn't say IR? Okay. Says Carson Wentz will outrush Jordan Mason against the Bengals, and we will continue screaming into the void. That last part is probably... That part doesn't add much to the odds. Pero Malo says some of Jettis and Chase yards will be under 100. And we just went over the betting lines. Jamar Chase is at 69.5. Justin Jefferson is at 72.5. So this would be pretty significantly under their totals for the two of them. But you could have just one of them lay an egg, right? One of them gets doubled a ton and never gets targeted in the game. And then the other one just has a modest day and you could hit this. But I'm calling it bold enough. Shred says that the Vikings would get packing for their trip to London/Ireland as early as possible in the shortest NFL game of all time, which would be 2 hours and 29 minutes, 1996 Chargers versus Colts. So the game is supposed to kick off at noon. It doesn't always kick off at noon exactly. Sometimes it's 12:02, sometimes it's 12:08, sometimes there's a long national anthem, right? So we'll go from kickoff to 2 hours and 29 minutes away from there. We will see if the game is still on. Ross says that the oldest Bengal tiger ever, the last two of these are fantastic, by the way. Both of you did a great job. Ross says the oldest Bengal tiger ever recorded lived to be 25 years old. Every touchdown scorer in this game will be 25 years old or younger. Also unrelated to my bold prediction, the tiger survived a crocodile attack, lost a leg, and then lived 13 more years with a prosthetic leg. Just wanted to share that crazy fact. Kind of sounds like the kind of quarterback that the Vikings would maybe be interested in. Kwesi might trade for that guy if he's been through that many injuries. So everybody has to be 25 years old or younger. This is going to be, we're going to use FanDuel rules, touchdown scorer rules. So like, a quarterback's passing touchdown, if Carson Wentz throws a passing touchdown to somebody young enough, then it counts. If he runs it in, then it counts as a Carson Wentz touchdown. So I don't know everybody's birthday exactly, but for example, you would have, in terms of like skill players that could get involved here, you have Ben Urasek, he's 23. You have Miles Price, he's 23. And that's it. Oh, and Ty Felton. Ty Felton is 22. That's it for Vikings skill players. So otherwise you have to have like defensive touchdowns or special teams moments or something like that. And for the Bengals, Andre Yosevich does. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. He counts. Jamar Chase is 25. Chase Brown is 25. Keeping on it, Jermaine Burton is 25. And Taj Brooks is 23. I'm sorry, Jermaine Burton is 24. Taj Brooks is 23. So it has to be those guys. Otherwise, you start getting into weird stuff with like defensive touchdowns or, tackle eligible or whatever. We'll see if they can do anything with that. The last one comes from the 14-yard line that tackled Danny Dimes, who says, from 1991 to 2021, Carson Wentz was the best QB in NFL history in yards per attempt, 9.71 in exactly 73-degree weather, according to this 4-year-old Reddit post, which is a Commander's Reddit post from his 1 year when he was in Washington. According to weather.gov, the temperature in Minneapolis at 2 p.m. will be 73 degrees. From 2 p.m. and beyond, or second half/fourth quarter and beyond, Carson Wentz will surpass 9.71 yards per attempt. Let's call this second half, and he will pass 9.71 yards per attempt in the second half. I'm not going to hold you to like exactly 2 p.m. and beyond, but I guess we'll be watching the clock. We probably could do that. We'll circle back to this one. If it turns out that like the exact second matters, we'll see. But for the time being, we'll see if he was even close in the second half or if things just like fall apart as an absolute disaster. I love these bold predictions. I love it when you guys come up with weird, fun facts and stuff. You guys have made this so much fun for me. But we'll see what kind of horrors this game brings to us. And hopefully we can shut it out of our minds or maybe be happy with it in our minds if the Vikings win. You all know the plan. On Sunday, immediately after the game, I'll be live right here on Locked On Vikings and Locked On Minnesota Sports simulcast on the squad show with Sam Ekstrom, Luke Inman, Ron Johnson. I'll have a proper show out on Monday morning recapping things, as well as the Monday morning squad show with Luke and Sam and also Arif Hassan. I will see you all for all of that. And as always, Skull.